Welcome back to another episode of Crime Scene X. Today's video will cover 3 true night drive horror stories. I appreciate all you guys and would love if you would like the video, comment what you think, and subscribe for daily scary story uploads. Sit back and enjoy the video. The highway was deserted as I drove home, with only the dim light from my dashboard to keep me company. It had been a long day, back-to-back meetings, followed by an uncomfortable dinner with clients, and I was eager to get home and crash into bed. It was just past midnight, the optimal time to avoid traffic, but not the best for keeping alert. My eyes felt heavy, so I cranked up the radio and rolled down the windows, hoping the crisp night air would wake me up. That's when I noticed it. Another car, pulling onto the highway behind me. There's always something unsettling about another car on an empty road in the dead of night. It's almost as if the isolation makes you more aware, more cautious. I didn't think much of it until the car accelerated, its headlights growing brighter in my rearview mirror. Great, someone's in a hurry, I muttered to myself. I was already going a solid 10 miles over the speed limit, so I wasn't inclined to go any faster, but the car kept getting closer until it was tailgating me. I could barely see its grille, framed menacingly by the blaring headlights. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. What did this driver want? Was he just impatient, or was there something more sinister at play? I sped up, hoping he would take the hint and either overtake me or back off. But he matched my speed, maintaining the uncomfortable closeness. My heart began to race. This was feeling less like impatience and more like intimidation. I considered my options. Pulling over seemed like an invitation for trouble, and stopping on the shoulder to let him pass felt equally risky. My best bet, I decided, was to take the next exit and try to lose him on local roads. I gripped the steering wheel tightly as I approached the exit. Without signaling, I made a quick maneuver, cutting across to the ramp. To my dismay, the car followed, headlights swerving as it adjusted to my sudden move. I was now convinced this wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. Once on the local roads, I took a series of random turns, hoping to confuse my pursuer. For a while, it seemed to work. I lost sight of the car and felt a momentary wave of relief wash over me. Just as I began to think I'd lost him, my heart sank. The headlights reappeared in my rearview mirror, closer than ever. Panic set in. I reached for my phone, planning to call 911, but just as I touched it, it slipped from my hand and fell between the seats. "You've got to be kidding me," I shouted, my voice tinged with desperation. Ahead, I saw a red traffic light. This could be my chance. If I ran the light, maybe he would be caught at the intersection, and I could put some distance between us. It was a risk, but I was running out of options. Just as I approached the light, it turned green. No chance of losing him now. However, right after the intersection, I spotted a gas station. Bright, open, and most importantly, occupied. I swerved into the parking lot, tires screeching, and parked as close to the entrance as possible. I jumped out of my car and ran inside. The cashier looked up, startled by my sudden entrance. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm being followed," I panted. "Can you please call the police?" As the cashier reached for the phone, I looked out the window. The car that had been following me had stopped at the edge of the gas station but did not pull in. After a moment that felt like an eternity, it slowly backed out onto the road and drove away. When the police arrived, they took a statement and advised me to stay at the gas station for a while longer to make sure it was safe to go home. I thanked the cashier, got back into my car, and let out a deep breath, finally allowing myself to absorb the gravity of what had just happened. The drive home was uneventful, but the sense of relief I felt was tainted by an unsettling realization. The road I'd always considered a simple means to an end, a pathway home, could just as easily become a place where life takes an unexpected, terrifying turn. The check engine light had been on for days, a nagging reminder that my old car was on its last legs. But I thought I could make it one more night, one more drive home. I was wrong. Around midnight, the car groaned, shuddered, and gave up the ghost. I was stranded on a desolate stretch of highway, surrounded by a sea of darkness. I took out my phone, praying for a bar or two of signal. Nothing. The words "no service" taunted me from the screen. I remembered a road sign about a mile back that said the nearest town was just 5 miles ahead. The catch? It lay on the other side of an expansive forest. I could either wait for daylight in my car, effectively a metal coffin, or I could brave the forest on foot. Decision made, I grabbed my flashlight and a small pocket knife for some semblance of protection. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. Entering the forest was like stepping into another world. The canopy above swallowed the moonlight, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, and each step seemed to amplify the surrounding sounds, the nocturnal symphony of crickets, owls, and unknown rustlings. Just as I was beginning to adjust to the dark and the discomfort, my flashlight caught something strange, human-like eyes staring at me from the foliage. As I focused the light, it revealed a man, standing alone in the clearing. His clothes were ragged and worn, his face hidden behind a curtain of disheveled hair and beard. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, without warning, the man lunged toward me. Panic surged through my veins. I turned and ran, fueled by adrenaline and sheer terror. Branches whipped my face as I tore through the undergrowth. I heard him behind me, his heavy breathing, the crunch of leaves under his chasing feet, the occasional guttural growl that raised the hairs on the back of my neck. My heart was a drumbeat of fear in my chest, each thud echoing the footsteps that relentlessly followed me. Finally, I saw the clearing. Trees gave way to open sky, and the lights of the distant town twinkled like stars on the horizon. I burst from the woods, stumbling onto the road that led to civilization. I dared to look back one last time. The forest edge was quiet, but the atmosphere was still charged, as if the man was right there, watching me. Breathing heavily, I sprinted the remaining distance to the town and into a 24-hour gas station. The clerk looked up, startled by my disheveled appearance. Through panting breaths, I relayed what had happened. He immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes to hear my story, and then escorted me back to my vehicle, where a tow truck was summoned. While driving back, the officer seemed contemplative. You know, it could have been a homeless person or some recluse living in the forest. Of course, it might have been someone far more dangerous, he mused, leaving the statement hanging in the air like a dark cloud. To this day, I can't say who or what I encountered in that forest. Was it a man down on his luck, someone living off the grid, or something far more sinister? I'll never know, and that's what terrifies me the most. I stick to well-traveled roads now, avoiding the unknown and unpredictable paths that once lured me with the promise of adventure. The time on my dashboard read 11:47 p.m. It had been a long day, filled with the mundanity of office paperwork and traffic snarls. The quickest way to get home was via The Cut, a winding, rarely used road that took me through densely wooded terrain. It was risky, especially at night, but I was exhausted and willing to take my chances. Driving along the deserted two-lane road, I felt the weight of the day lifting. I was almost home. The Cut was notorious for having no cell reception, a fact I tried to ignore as I hummed along to the fading radio signal. And then my car sputtered. My heart leapt into my throat as the low fuel warning light blinked on. Perfect. Just perfect, I muttered, cursing myself for not checking the gas gauge earlier. In the dim light of my car's interior, I frantically scanned the road ahead. That's when I saw it, a flickering sign illuminated by a single, struggling floodlight. Kurt's 24/7 Gas and Mart. Relief washed over me. Pulling into the nearly empty lot, I noticed there was something off about this gas station. Maybe it was the flickering lights, or perhaps the grimy windows of the attached convenience store. Regardless, I had no other option. I parked next to the pump and got out of the car. Just as I picked up the nozzle, I noticed someone watching me from across the road. He was standing there in the darkness, just beyond where the light met the shadows, staring intently. A shiver ran down my spine. Trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, I began fueling my car. But the pump was painfully slow, each gallon adding to my growing sense of vulnerability. Then I heard a faint sound, the unmistakable crunch of gravel underfoot. My heart raced. Was the stranger approaching? Fueled by a surge of adrenaline, I replaced the nozzle, not caring that the tank was far from full. I dashed to the driver's seat and turned the ignition. To my utter horror, the engine coughed but didn't start. I tried again, praying to hear the comforting roar of the engine. The sound of footsteps drew closer, each crunch louder than the last. Finally, the engine roared to life. I wasted no time, slamming the pedal to the floor and steering the car back onto the road. The tires skidded for a moment, but then found their grip, propelling me away from that eerie gas station and the stranger who had watched me. As I sped home, my heart still pounding, I vowed never to take that shortcut again, no matter how late it was. But the terror of that night never left me. Every once in a while, when I find myself driving late at night, I can't help but think of that lonely gas station and the eyes that watched me from the shadows. And I shudder at the thought of what could have happened if my car hadn't started, or if I'd stayed just a minute longer. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please like the video, comment what you thought, and subscribe for daily uploads.